Hey, Footland, did you know only with NFL Game Pass you get every out-of-market preseason game live? Top rookies, comeback players, new players on new teams. It's all happening in the preseason live with NFL Game Pass. Even if you miss the game, you can replay it after it's aired. So kick off the 2018 NFL season with a 7-day free trial of NFL Game Pass. Sign up now at NFL.com/fantasyfootballers. Game on.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from Draft.com Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
We're back again.
We're back with so much energy. Football is almost here. That makes up for your skipping out the other day.
I got a fever.
You got a fever?
And the only prescription is preseason football. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so excited to be talking about running backs.
Preseason football is the cure-all.
You've got a problem. You have a
10 minutes of football.
You have a football problem.
Yes. And
when the prescription is the preseason.
Only to, kind of satiate the very deep desire for any type of meaningful game action. And even if it's just a quarter, it's a quarter more than I had yesterday, Mike.
That's
a quarter more than I had last week.
Also, and there's true. A lot of different games going on. You get 4 games. It's like you saw one, right? 4 quarters make $1.
I say it in jest because I am not one of those poo-pooers
of the preseason.
Of the preseason.
Well, you're not a season ticket holder anymore.
No, I don't have to pay for those extra 2 games. That's nonsense. You charging me full price? Get out of here with that.
Yes,
I love the preseason. You learn a lot.
They should
NFL
charge
teams.
In proportion to. They charge you the exact prorated amount that the starters play.
Ooh,
that's how they should do the game. The starters play a quarter, you pay a quarter of the price. The starters pay like a quarter and a half. Prorate me, bro.
I'm going to run that by the billionaires and see what they have to say about it.
Is that how billionaires become billionaires, by prorating?
Hold on. They've said no.
Oh, darn it. Well, welcome into the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Andy, Mike, and Jason back once more. Today, we're digging in the top 10 running backs. We're here to equip you to win your fantasy league in 2018, and I'm ready. I'm ready for action. Let's jump in with the quick question. By the way, if you want to keep up with us,
you do,
and you do. Trust me, you do. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers, on Instagram, which is we're Fantasy Footballers on Instagram, and the website is thefantasyfootballers.com. We always have new articles and resources and information all throughout the year to get you primed and ready to win each and every week. So, quick question: the fever. The fever is here.
It certainly
Preseason
is.
week 1 is here. Who are you most excited to see tonight?
There's no question for me. I mean, it's low-hanging fruit, but it's the ripest, most juicy fruit, and that is going to get you.
That's going to move you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
No,
juicy fruit is going to move you.
Man, that's right. I was trying.
I knew it.
No, it has to be Andrew Luck.
You're also missing a ski slope and doing
water skis. There's all sorts of
doing super gnarly tricks while chewing your gum. The flavor lasts for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
The flavor lasts for about 10 seconds.
Do you remember juicy fruit?
Oh, I do.
It was a great couple chews.
The Percy Harvin of gum.
It was so sweet at first. Anyway, speaking of lucky, Andrew Luck is the clear-cut guy I want to see the most. Does he have the velocity? Really, I was going to go into a tangent of like, does he have the velocity? Is the arm strong? I'm not going to be watching for any of that. I just want to watch it. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to see him play football.
Yeah. I'm in a weird place with Andrew Luck because I can see that argument, but I'm going to be like holding my breath and biting my nails and like a father watching his son play. Like, I'm just afraid of something bad to happen to Andrew Luck because I want him to come back. He even admitted that he wasn't sure that it was going to happen. 600 days without a game of football.
Yeah,
and
can you be as great? I just want to know that. Like, are these athletes able to miss 600 days and be the exact same player?
Well, according to you two fellas, Josh Gordon can, but I have Andrew Luck lower in my rankings than where
he's played within 600 days, Jason.
Sure, I'm sure he had 600 days off at one point.
He also proved last year
and then he
that
torched
you can.
Casey Hayward after those 600 days.
I have Andrew Luck right now, I believe, as my quarterback 13, which is a little low for where he usually is ranked, and that's part of that is from the time off and the injury worries. So I'm excited to see the Colts do nothing but hand the ball off for the first quarter tonight.
It might sound rough. I want to see Andrew Luck get hit.
That he can get up.
I want to get it out of the way. He's nervous. Everyone's nervous about it. Take the hit. You're going to be fine. Get up. Move on. Be a dominant quarterback. I am selfish with this pick. I want to see Josh Rosen play. He isn't until Saturday, but I am excited to see what the Arizona Cardinals rookie quarterback can do.
I'm going to go with the rookie running backs. I think Darius Geis, the hype train is real for Darius Geis. Alex Smith came out, said that he doesn't see any weaknesses in his game. And there are other rookie running backs. I want to see what Ronald Jones can do. I want to see Saquon on the field. I want to see Rashad Penny. So I'm very excited to see those guys because
why did you leave out my boy?
I want to see Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah.
You know what, Jay?
Give it to me.
Carry on my wayward son.
I was going to say I'm going to raise his ADP because you kind of interrupted me.
Look, I've had at first it was treacherous waters, but people have got my back. They're sending me screenshots of them drafting Marlon Mack in the 6th or whoever. They're not mock drafting Kerryon Johnson. We're gonna tear that ADP down.
We're going to distort
Mr.
reality.
Gorbachev. Tear down that ADP.
Oh, my gosh.
We're keeping the important things important things.
He just
here.
went Ronald Reagan in here?
Yeah.
Is that what just happened?
That's a fresh reference.
That's a fresh reference. Oh, man, the Boris Yeltsin of references right there. Well done.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay, let's get into the main event.
Running backs.
Stay tuned. We got a good Roosevelt coming up.
Oh, my goodness.
Eleanor.
Both of them.
Mr. Gorbachev. Well, we're going to talk about running backs today. Let's start with an overview. If you are just getting back into fantasy football, preparing for 2018, I get this question all the time, all year long, up until the drafts. How important is the running back position? What would you do if you were in my shoes and drafting at the turn at 12 and the first pick of the second round? And do you go wide receiver? And look, those questions are going to come. And I want to answer them now with the reality of the running back position, which is when it makes sense, I always take a running back in the first round. And it almost always makes sense, at least for me personally. The drop-off from the top-tier running backs to the next level, to the next tier, it's a big drop-off.
When you say the top tier, you're actually speaking of the top 2 or 3 tiers.
When
not
I say
just the top 4.
meaningful, impactful running backs, the RB1s, the RB2s, down to kind of the waiver wire crop, it's just much more difficult to find a running back that can contribute regularly to your fantasy team. It's hard to find running backs that are able to carry a workload, right? Last year, I think there were only 9 that ran for over 1,000 yards, which you say, okay, that shouldn't be very hard. 60 yards a game, and you get to 1,000. Only 9 of them did it. So it's difficult to find.
Certainly, and I think that if you look at average draft position, it's no big surprise. Everyone is believing this theory. Running backs are locked and loaded in the first 24, 36 picks. It's the vast majority is running backs. And to that point, I would just say this: I am 100% in agreement with you, Andy. I'm almost always a running back first round, oftentimes running back first and second round. That's what I do in my drafts. That's what I would recommend to most people listening to do. But I will throw out that I believe this is a good year because of what's happening with ADP, because of what a down year it was for wide receiver touchdowns last year. If you're out there and you want to attack the zero RB theory, which is this, it's an fragility theory where instead of taking guys that are taking so much damage because they get the ball so much early and can get injured, you stockpile the best of the best wide receivers. This year, you could have a Julio Jones and an Odell Beckham in your first and second round. You used to have
Which is ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. And then follow that in the next round and get 5-star wide receivers where you have clear-cut the best, and then you load the back of your draft up with pass-catching backs if you're in any kind of PPR format that will always outproduce the expectation, like a Duke Johnson. And then the theory with that is as the season goes on, those second-string running backs actually become more valuable as guys ahead of them go down, whereas the third-string wide receivers, they don't really – they don't get rewarded as much should someone go down in front of them.
No thanks.
Yeah,
no thank you. There's two ways to get to my destination. There's the really straight road that's paved and beautiful, and then there's the really treacherous mountainside drive with no guardrails. I want to take the straight line road. I don't want to go on that adventure, so most often I take running backs. Look at this. Most common players in the ESPN Fantasy Finals last year. 7 players ahead of Antonio Brown, including Alvin Kamara, Todd Gurley, Jamal Williams, Kenyon Drake, running back.
I think you're proving the zero RB. You just listed 3 waiver wire running backs.
No, Alvin Kamara, Todd Gurley aren't.
Alvin Kamara was a waiver wire running back.
That's how you're treating him?
Yes.
Well, last year, if he was drafted, he was drafted like a zero running back.
Let me reinforce this with there's 20-plus players ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, the number 1 wide receiver last season, including Melvin Gordon, including Kareem Hunt and Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Kenyon Drake, like I said.
So those are top picks. Yes.
What I'm saying is the most common players are running backs, are the high-performing running backs. So, yes, if you can do it, if you can ride the rails, if you can go on that mountain pass in your hot rod, then that's great. You can get there. I'm not saying you can't. There's no wrong way to win.
It works a lot better.
You win anyway. If you win, you're happy.
It works a lot better when you're in a 3 wide receiver full PPR league. If you're in
flex.
If you're in a 2 and a flex, half point or else. And like I said beforehand, I just wanted to have it on record. I actually think it will work this season, whereas I've been usually against that. But I am a running back early. I mean, in our top 10 tips and tricks live show in Minneapolis, one of mine was saddle a stud, and that is a running back or Antonio Brown.
Or potentially Michael Gallup.
So who's the yes, fair.
So the number 1, these are half PPR, Brooks, correct? These are our consensus half PPR top 10 running backs.
Yes, sir.
Just making sure I'm speaking the same language. Number 1 is Todd Gurley.
Yes, sir. And the way that we are ranking these, Mike and I both have Todd Gurley as the number 2 in our individual rankings. Andy, you have him as the number 1 running back, and that is good enough for this top spot. He finished there last season.
93% of games as an RB1 or an RB2.
Yeah, he was unbelievable.
80% of them as an RB1. That's as reliable as they get at the running back position. So it begs the question because, look, I don't have to tell people what Todd Gurley did. You either had him and he did it for you, or your opponent had him and he did it to you.
Yep.
And so you were happy or you were sad. But let me ask it this way. Give me a reason to pick somebody over Todd Gurley. Sure. What's the argument for – look, because all these players are good. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. All top 10 are good players. All top 10 are great running backs. So give me a reason to pick somebody over Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think that Todd Gurley last season had 19 touchdowns, 6 of which were passing touchdowns, and the Los Angeles Rams scored. Their point total was at a level where if you go back and look historically, they're not scoring the same or more. They are 100%. They are going to score fewer points in 2018 than they did in 2017. So that's not to say Todd Gurley's not going to be great or that he can't even be the number 1 running back. But, there will not be 6 passing touchdowns, in my opinion, for Todd Gurley. He has been as good as his offensive line has been. His actual individual efficiency has been about the same as rookie year, his down sophomore year, and his fantastic number 1 running back year last season. But it was all based on the offensive line getting so much better last year, even better than, we all thought, oh, they've improved their offensive line. But their offensive line was tremendous. They washed away Jeff Fisher, which really helps.
They
shine.
washed him away down
Like with
down
a
the
power
river.
sprayer?
Yeah, a power sprayer, and then they put some nice wax on too to make sure he couldn't come back.
It's so slippery.
But
He's trying to get in the front door, but they've just waxed the ground.
I have the Rams scoring less points this season than last season, and I see that Todd Gurley, while great, has he's had an up and down little bit to his career based on the offensive line and head coaching, whereas Le'Veon Bell, we've never seen him on the field where he's not unbelievably good ever.
I did ask you to give me the reason why you would pick somebody else, and you've accomplished that goal. I guess I was supposed to push this button.
Number 1.
Number 1 is Todd Gurley on our consensus rank.
Thanks.
Let's move on.
Number 2.
Le'Veon Bell. We've talked about this if you've listened to the show for more than the last couple of weeks. I mentioned that I have Lev Bell actually at number 4. So you're welcome. That's why he's not our consensus number 1, because Jason and Mike both have him at number 1 overall. He's great. He's a great player, 93% of his weeks, the same as Todd Gurley as an RB1 and RB2. 80% of his weeks is an RB1, the exact same as Todd Gurley. You can flip the coin. I find the risk to Le'Veon Bell slightly higher than the risk to Todd Gurley.
That's fair.
And that's it. I mean, he's missing camp. His future is not secured in Pittsburgh, but he's going to be a great player when he's on the field. I think there's a little risk to injury because of missing camp, and that's about it. That's the story with Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, he was the only running back last year to touch the ball over 400 times. The number 2 running back in terms of touches was Shady McCoy, under 350. Le'Veon Bell is the ultimate workhorse in the NFL. He is one of the best pass catchers at the running back position. He's a better pass catcher than a lot of wide receivers.
106 targets last year for Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, and this is not the first time he's had over 100 targets. His sophomore year, 105. 2 years ago, 94 targets. That was in 12 games. In 12 games, Le'Veon Bell was the running back 3. Right? There are not many running backs that can do that. I think even Todd Gurley, as great as he was this past year, you give him 12 games, I don't think he's the running back 3. I don't think that's going to happen. And I do agree with you, Andy, that there's a little bit more risk with Le'Veon Bell. The contract situation does not bother me, however. This is his last year as a Pittsburgh Steeler. They have no reason, in my opinion, to not feed him the ball another 400
This
times.
is going to be the first time we see a 600-touch season. I mean, why not just give him everything he can handle? He's going to be gone next year. You don't need to worry about keeping his career fresh and stable in that way.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference between Lev and Gurley production-wise was the touchdowns. Gurley had 13 on the ground. Lev had 9. Gurley had 6 through the air. As Jason mentioned, Lev had 2 through the air. Both prolific offenses. The offensive line rank for Pittsburgh going into 2018, according to Pro Football Focus's analysis, is the 4th overall. Gurley
It's not bad.
Has the 10th overall.
It's a little worse.
It is, but look, it's razor thin, the difference between those players. Let's talk about some of the more interesting to discuss players. Our number 3.
Number 3.
David Johnson.
This guy was a running back 1 or 2 100% of the time last year.
Okay. All right.
That is true.
Because he played all of
one game.
Most
of one game.
And then he busted his wrist.
Does he understand how disappointed we were? Do you think he knows?
I think David Johnson was probably more disappointed than all of us.
I don't know, man. I was pissed. Just throwing that out there. I was very disappointed.
Yeah, let's not forget about David Johnson. Let me read back the 2016 stat line.
Do.
Let's refresh the memory. 16 games played, 293 carries for over 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns on the ground. And let's throw in 80 receptions for 879 yards and 4 touchdowns on 120 passing targets. Look, make no mistake about it, nobody has an illusion here that the Arizona Cardinals offense is going to be a powerhouse in 2018. What we know is that David Johnson is going to be the focal point.
Yep.
Much like Ezekiel Elliott is was for a Dallas offense that wasn't at the top of the league last year. It's workload with David Johnson. It's a skill set that is so expansive that he could very well be the number 2 wide receiver on the team.
His goal, he has said it many times, is 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. He wants to join that very, very exclusive club. The touchdowns are a concern. There's not going to be 16 rushing touchdowns. The offensive line is a major concern. And just recently, A.Q. Shipley, the starting center for the Arizona Cardinals, went down with an ACL injury. He will not be playing this season.
Granted, he was also not good for the last couple of years, but he was
the starter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if a player is bad. If they have earned the starting
Give
role,
me the not good starter over the not good backup.
Means they are better than the backup.
I would agree, except in this
You're just
situation.
saying it like it's almost, well,
I'm just saying
he's not good. Have you thought about that?
But their highest drafted offensive lineman, Mason Cole, who played some center. Some people believe that he is a better player. Remains to be seen. But because he's a rookie, he didn't just come in and say, okay, you're the starter. He could be. My point is just I don't think there's going to be a huge hole left by A.Q. Shipley. But injuries on the offensive line, that's the big worry. DJ Humphries on the left tackle. He's good when he's healthy. He's not always healthy. Mike Iupati, left guard. He's good when he's healthy. Justin Pugh. There's so many guys here that are good in theory, hardly on the field.
Yeah, he's entering his 4th season in the NFL. He reported to camp after a brief holdout, so he's kind of trusting the Cardinals to reward him, which I expect them to do. But he enters the final year of the rookie contract right now with something to prove. He's only going to make $1.9 million next year.
Right. In this offense, we've already talked about where there are some concerns. You ran through the offensive line. Good when healthy. You can say that exact same thing about Sam Bradford. Good when healthy. If Sam Bradford is playing, though, this team, this offense will be better than they are currently being given credit for.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknown, right? There's a lot of we haven't seen it, a lot of moving pieces. Christian Kirk was drafted.
A whole new coaching regime in town as well.
Right, yeah. Mike McCoy, new offensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting. I will say this. I went on the RB Scouts podcast recently. He does some great work solely focused around running back scouting and all of that. And David Johnson is his far and away number 1. If he had the 101, he would be taking David Johnson.
And
because of his –
I don't blame people if they want to do that.
Right, because of his ability as a pass catcher, which he is the best pass-catching running back in the NFL. I feel like if he were to play wide receiver, he would be a really good wide receiver in the NFL.
His skills particularly beyond 10 yards from the line of scrimmage, I think are better than any running back in football. He has the ability to run the wheel. He has the ability to get outside and make plays that we're not used to seeing. I do think he's a better receiver than Todd Gurley is. I mean, Todd Gurley was a monster screen player last year,
right,
but it wasn't as diverse a route tree. So we're going to get to number 4. Before we do, I'm going to pause. I'm going to remind everybody it's been a long off season without football, but FanDuel has spent it getting into the best shape of its life.
Working out.
That means FanDuel is ready for more. More ways to play on FanDuel, more ways to challenge your friends, and more ways to, kind of important here, win. If you're not a fantasy expert, FanDuel is still clearly the best place to play. They have all types of contests now for casual fans. Let me give you an example. Beat the Score contests. They're great because they pay out everyone who hits a certain score. That's new. That's pretty cool. All you have to do is finish in the money to split an equal share of the cash on the Beat the Score contest. They have new options of playing with your friends, including, you can win your friends cash. You can take it away. Don't play me, guys. Don't play me. They're doing their part to make the preseason bearable because they have contests up and running for week 1. All right? And right now you can get a $10 bonus when you make your first deposit at FanDuel. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/footballers. That's FanDuel.com/footballers. Age and state restrictions apply.
And we have also been telling you, go to games, have fun, be there, and we want you to use SeatGeek when you get your tickets. They've been a long-time partner of the Fantasy Footballers. We all have it. I've used it. Andy, you went to a baseball game today.
Yes.
And SeatGeek makes it so easy to not only go to those live events, but get a great price on it. They, have all of these different websites. They're searching hundreds of different places to get you the best price. They make it very clear in their app. Big green circle? Green means go. Look for those ones that shows the best value in different sections so that you can find quickly before someone else grabs that ticket the best value available. All of the tickets purchased on SeatGeek are fully guaranteed, which is obviously very important. So that's what we want you to use to go to your live events. Best of all, every Foot Clan listener gets $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code Footballers. That's promo code Footballers for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets.
Speaking of green means go.
Number 4.
Let's talk about Alvin Kamara. Super. Camario last year took over the league, took over your fantasy league.
Took over your hearts.
Took over your heart. We have consistency charts in the Ultimate Draft Kit, and they display a player's consistency in a variety of colors.
Green is good.
Green is very good. Dark green is even better. That means he finished as an RB1, and Alvin Kamara from the Green Bay game through Carolina, so what is that? That's 7 consecutive weeks, finished as an RB1, including finishes of 1, 4, 3, 1, 1.
That's ridiculous.
In a 5-week span, single-handedly winning fantasy leagues for people. He was the most common player on championship final teams last year. And Mike is right. It's because he wasn't drafted in the first round.
Well,
it's because you got a first-round running back in either the late rounds or the waiver wire.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was really surprised. I did not realize that Kamara was our consensus 4. To me, he's much worse than the next player as far as
much worse.
Well, as
just saying, careful with the phrasing.
Well, I'm saying that from a standpoint of volume. That is the worry. We talked about this on a recent show. 120 carries. He didn't really get involved in the first 3 weeks. Adrian Peterson was there. But how much can you expect that carry count to go up? Because I think if his efficiency comes back to, I don't know, superhuman levels instead of, superhero levels, just being a superhuman, I feel like he's going to need to have 75 more carries this season. And that very well could happen. I mean, Mark Ingram missing the first
Sean Payton
few
has
games.
pumped the brakes a little bit. Head coach of the New Orleans Saints has come out repeatedly and said Alvin Kamara is not just going to get a huge dump truck of carries poured onto him. They're going to use him. They're going to be smart with how they use him.
Well, they used him the right way last year, right?
Yeah.
Nobody there or in fantasy is complaining.
He's at number 4 because I have him at number 2.
Woo!
And you guys both have him at number 5, and I've made that case. Last year he had an insane 7.7 yards per touch. Okay, and so if you take 30% of that away, let's say he's not going to be – he'll be 70% of last year's Alvin Kamara in efficiency. You give him that 5.39 yards per touch, and you project last year's total touches, that ends up with 1,100 total yards. He'd be well outside of that top 5.
Right.
But I made this case. Look, last year he only had 201 total touches, right? If you take his second half, Alvin Kamara's second half projection, it puts him at 90 receptions, 160 total attempts on the ground. That touch total's 250, which is still well below Gurley, 343, Bell, 406, Hunt, 325, Gordon, 342. But you still end up with a season at about 1,400 total yards. So, yes, it's dependent on the touchdown totals. Yes, it's dependent on his volume increasing, but you're not asking him to increase from 200 to 400 like Bell. You're saying give him 50 more carries. I think it balances out. I really like Alvin Kamara because he's on arguably a top 3 offense in football. They know what they have in him, and it's the pass catching. He can catch 90 passes. He can catch 100 passes.
Yeah, if you look back year over year in the Drew Brees era, the New Orleans Saints are fantastic for running backs if you're in any kind of half-point or full-point league. So
Pierre Thomas made a lot of money because of Sean Payton.
Exactly. So did Darren Sproles.
I don't think
Reggie Bush.
Kamara is a bad pick. when I'm in that top 4 picks, I just want one of those workhorses. I want one of those guys that has the very rare right to have close to 300 touches.
Let me ask you this question then, because you made up the moniker "Saddle a Stud" in your tips and tricks.
Yeehaw!
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the drafting of Alvin Kamara, does that qualify for saddling a stud? Because it seems like you've defined that as there is a big workload that stud is pulling.
Right. And, honestly, Alvin Kamara's efficiency cannot be discounted the same way that, Jamal Charles used to have, just low 200 carries, and he was fine. And he was obviously a stud fantasy football player. But I do struggle with that, right? Like, if I'm on the clock and Leonard Fournette and Alvin Kamara are there, Alvin Kamara projects to have more fantasy points, but I still worry because I am always going to be an opportunity over talent type of guy. And if I know that someone's going to touch the ball an extra 100 times, chances are it's going to be better for that player, usually. So I would say Alvin Kamara is a stud because of his efficiency, but I'm not very excited right now in the first round to have him.
Do you have anything you want to add, Mike? Do you want to weigh in at all?
I agree with Jason that I have him projected high. I've even recently pulled. I went and I took another look at his projections, a fresh eye. I took him down a little bit, and he still is my 5th ranked running back. But of these early guys in the first round, he brings me the largest questions.
Out of curiosity, I just checked all of the draft rankings over at Fantasy Pros across over 100 experts, and I am the highest on Alvin Kamara. Nobody has him at 1, and I have him at 2. So there's only one other that believes in that, and I get it. Look, push comes to shove in a mock draft, in any draft, it's harder for me to stare down Zeke and Kamara and make the choice of Alvin Kamara, but I do believe that
you wrote an article, The Case for Kamara, early this offseason. So it makes sense that that's you genuinely believe it.
I think the big thing is that I think he wants to be great. I think he wants to be one of the best running backs ever, and so translating that into another successful season, that means a lot to me.
Number 5.
I am very thankful that we get to talk about Ezekiel Elliott now. I am thankful that this offseason is not
in the context of football.
In the context of football, not like last offseason where we had to deal with not just the what's going on with Zeke, when's the suspension coming, but we had this carried on into the year. He missed a 6-week span
games.
Right in the important part of your season last year. So Zeke ended up with those 6 games missing with 983 yards, 7 touchdowns, caught 26 passes, a couple of touchdowns through the air. This year, Pro Football Focus has their offensive line ranked at number 2. We've known the Dallas offensive line to be a powerhouse for many years. He averaged 24.2 carries per game in the 10 games last year. That's enormous. That is what Jason's talking about. Your odds are just so great that something good's going to happen if you hand your running back the ball 24 times and he's talented like Ezekiel Elliott.
Last year, Zeke, he played 10 games because he had the 6-game suspension. Against Denver, he had his one dumper of a game where he carried the ball 9 times for 8 yards on the ground. But what that means is in the 9 other games, his entire season stat line was 233 carries, 975 yards, and 7 rushing touchdowns in 9 games.
It's not just those 9.
That is outrageous.
If you keep in mind his rookie year and you look at his entire career, that one game, that's the only game he has not been a weekly top 24 running back in his career. It's never 96% of his games, 96%, that's basically all of them, are really solid games. Right. And, what more do you want than that? 76% of his games, he's an RB1.
Let me ask this question then, because it just popped into my head, and I have a microphone, so I get to do that. Here's the question. I've heard you say that so many times, Mike. projecting those numbers, how astronomical, and they're
no, that's not projecting.
No.
That's what he did.
I get it, but then projecting those over a season, why isn't he your number one running back? If it's a 90%, I'm asking that question. Like, why do we not find Zeke at number one?
I can tell you right now.
Pass catching.
Yep, he's my number 3 running back.
But those numbers would supersede any pass catching, based on what you're saying.
Well, no, because Lev Bell and Todd Gurley put up astronomical numbers as well, and then they add in the pass catching.
Yeah, you add in an extra 800 yards receiving, and then on top of that, half a point every single time you catch the ball. That's the reason why Zeke isn't my number one guy. But the same with David Johnson. You want to take Zeke number one? That's not a bad pick. You have not made a mistake, despite what your draft room's going to laugh and say, you should have taken Gurley. You should have taken Le'Veon Bell. Zeke has an equal chance to finish as the number one guy as those other running backs, in my opinion.
All right, let's move on.
Number 6.
Let's find out if this guy has a chance to finish at number one. Number 6, Melvin Gordon. I have him at 5. Jason and Mike, you have him at 6. We all like him. Here's something interesting about Melvin Gordon. He was stuffed 68 times last year, second most in the NFL. He broke 40 tackles, second most in the NFL. That tells me his offensive line gave him lots of opportunities to be both stuffed and break tackles.
Fair.
And they head into 2018, the 23rd ranked offensive line in football. But last year, how could you complain about Melvin Gordon? 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground, and an impressive 58 receptions. He has that element to his game. They lean on him. He doesn't want to, we had a chance to interview him a few weeks back. Jason did. And look, he doesn't want to leave the field. It bothers him to leave the field. That's what I want from my running back. This is also a team we project to be very good. And the last 2 years, he's finished the season as the number 7 overall running back in 2016 in only 13 games played, and the number 5 overall running back last year. Talk to me about Melvin Gordon.
I think you just mentioned it. I mean, there's a lot of – if you dive deep into the metrics, you can make a case against Melvin Gordon that he is not that efficient. And that's fair on one hand to say, okay, we want to dive deep into this analytics, but the reality is this. You just said he's been, a top 8 running back in his 2 seasons after coming out of college, supposed to be a stud, and his only competition on a good offense is Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. Like, he's going to score touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's the running back that's getting them all. He's going to rush for 1,000 yards. I mean, will he be the number 1 running back? No, because I don't think he is as talented as Le'Veon Bell, as talented as Zeke, as talented as David Johnson, but he is very talented. I mean, standing next to him, you go, "Oh, he's a different.
This
he's a
makes
different
sense.
Type of human." I mean, a
They
beast.
actually a 3D printer. That's what they did.
And I will
They
throw
did a
out,
good job.
That's how he was made.
I will throw out when this doc was being made, I had him at 6. He's actually 7 because I moved the next running back up to 6, and I know that people go through the rankings with a fine-tooth comb.
So you don't want your preemptive
Yes.
strike on Twitter?
Yes, so
Don't at me.
yeah, Melvin Gordon, he plummeted all the way to number 7 for me. He had the third most attempts at the running back position. He had the 4th most touches. He one of only 4 running backs to touch the ball over 340 times. The volume is there. The offense is there. I feel very confident with Melvin Gordon as a 3-down guy. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know that this is a different stance than I have had on Melvin Gordon for his entire career. And I don't want to jump into the inefficiency argument. I'm just accepting that he puts up fantasy points.
All right. I'm very excited to talk about the guy you moved ahead of him.
Number 7.
Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley comes in at number 7. Mike at 6. I have him at 7. Jason has him at 8. We all love him. I'm going to make a terrible analogy once again on this show. Look, you don't get a look to last year. Saquon Barkley has not been in the NFL yet. But this is the equivalent of flicking on the oven light and you can't quite see what's inside, but everything smells good and everything looks good. And
I think it's cookies.
You just got to open the oven, and that's what fantasy owners get to do this year, and they're going to like it. They're going to like it a lot. They're going to like it so much that they're going to be in my position, which is I have the number one pick in one of our keeper leagues. I traded down 2 picks because part of me wants Saquon more than Zeke. Part of me wants Saquon more than Kamara. And it's the part of me that every fantasy owner has inside that wants to see the unknown, because what if Saquon Barkley is Zeke plus 60 receptions?
Right.
65 receptions. The draft capital the Giants spent on Saquon Barkley tells me everything I need to know. The combine tells me everything I need to know.
His quads.
His quadricep muscles.
One quad from Saquon Barkley.
It takes 2 looks to see them. You can't look just once.
You got a pan.
You got to have a pano. He's got pano quads, Mike.
It's the size of my waist, and the man is strong, and I think it's just the body of work from these other running backs. That's the only reason why Saquon Barkley is down here at number 7. He was drafted as the 2nd overall pick in the NFL draft, where running backs don't tend to do that anymore. They're going to give him a huge workload. Zeke, I'm not going to comp Saquon to Zeke. What you're hoping for is another David Johnson. He reminds me more.
That's probably a better talent comp.
His running style and pass catching ability reminds me more of DJ. And the question will be the Giants. Can the Giants do enough to get Saquon Barkley up in that 9 rushing touchdown area?
Yeah, and I think Saquon Barkley will do enough to get him up there. I mean,
it's him versus 11 guys. So I know he's superhuman, but
the reality is, he's not one of those guys where you go, he is a freak athlete. He's the freak athlete. You look at his overall spark score, he's 99th percentile. He's breaking things left, right, and center. I mean, he's moving the needle. And, the fact that you add in his best trait might be his receiving ability to today's NFL and fantasy football, which almost always in leagues now rewards half a full point for a reception. I think his baseline is enormously high. You're right, Mike. It all comes down to the touchdowns. And I think they'll be there for Saquon.
Look, you have to overcome an offensive line that was not great and is projected to be the 25th in the league. You have to overcome a rushing attack that last year was 26th in the league in total yards. I want to go back 2 seconds because you referenced the spark score. We have a lot of new listeners that might not understand what that means, but that's the acronym that is built around the combine. It stands for speed, power, agility, reaction, and quickness. They measure those 5 things, and he's been better than anybody's ever been.
It's a score for an athlete.
Yeah. What's your spark score, Mike?
Ooh, what's the lowest number
that exists?
He's a 1 percentile athlete. And just to put that in frame of reference,
I think we ran the 40 kind of like the lineman.
Yeah, I would say
I think we put up lineman 40s.
Yeah, I would say a 6th round lineman.
Yeah.
7th round
undrafted. A CFL lineman.
I ran the 40 like an undrafted offensive lineman.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Who was just practicing, not invited. Yeah, I mean, a couple years ago,
I can beat Rich Eisen, I think.
David Johnson was, a freak at the combine. He's a 95th percentile athlete. So, I mean, according to that measurement, Saquon is even a step above.
Stay healthy, Saquon.
Fair.
Stay healthy.
That would ruin a lot of things.
Eat your vegetables.
I want to see it. It's not fair if we don't get to see it.
I also like that his head is on his shoulders. For a rookie, I mean, he's
as in he is not decapitated.
Yes. I mean, I don't like headless running backs. They can't even get the helmet on. It's just falling off their shoulder pads. They look ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he's a smart guy. He's a bright young man.
No concussions.
And,
Salute.
No
we figured it out.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I like that his head's on his shoulders too, Jay. Don't worry.
What's the next number
We're all
button
on
you
board.
need to push?
Number 8.
Leonard Fournette. Let's talk about him. Another player I think fits, for me, the category of potential number 1 guys. He had 36 receptions last year. I can see that total increasing as long as he's on the field. I mean, he missed 3 games last year. He probably is going to land in that 45 reception total. area. I mean,
no.
If you don't expect him to play a full season, because if you project what he did last year in his healthy games, that's where he'd be.
Sure. It comes down to T.J. Yeldon when he came in played decently well, and Yeldon was not getting time early on. Which to be fair, I get it. You spent a really high pick, and you said Leonard Fournette, you are everything. And the possible emergence of Corey Grant, who
do you take under on 40 receptions? Then?
I would take the under on, and Corey Grant, running back, who is predominantly special teams, but every time he gets the ball in space, he is electric. It's just those two guys siphoning off a little bit of the pass work.
Well, that's why you have him at 10. So yes. Jason, you have him at 7. You're the highest.
And I wonder if it's high enough. I really do. I mean, the issue with him, I've said this before, worries of missing games due to injuries. That's kind of been a problem for him. He is going, I've got him projected for 300 rushing attempts. I mean, that is a number that you want. And 39 receptions. Last season, Jacksonville faced the 31st best.
Please say it in a way that I can really understand what you're saying.
They faced the second hardest strength of schedule against the run. So a lot of times people are bashing on Fournette and his yards per carry at 3.9, but the reality was they did not open Blake Bortles up through the first half of last season. Everyone knew what was going on, and it was against really tough competition. This season he projects for a middle-of-the-road 13th easiest strength of schedule against the run. I think that they're going to have to pay a little bit more attention to some of the receiving options, and I expect – if he's healthy, Leonard Fournette is, he is an exceptional talent. He's a Zeke-level talent.
I was going to say Zeke is the comp for Leonard Fournette of 20.6 carries per game when he played.
And
third highest in football. So you get volume with he's a stud.
And not only that,
you can saddle Jason.
Yes, he's 100% a stud you can saddle. But you also have, an upgraded offensive line.
Yes.
Like a majorly upgraded offensive line. At the guard position, one of the best run-blocking guards in the league added. I mean, what did that do for Todd Gurley when they fixed their left tackle problem? All of a sudden, the same player just got so much better because it's like, oh, let me run through this hole.
Last year, the problem for Fournette was just season-long consistency with the missed games and some off weeks. He started very well. He finished as an RB1 or 2 84% of the time. He finished as an RB1 46% of the time. But he had a couple weeks where he was in that RB4 and beyond range that really burnt you. Mike, you have him at 10. Obviously, that's still an RB1, but
right.
You see the lack of receptions as the reason why?
The lack of receptions and the injury history of Leonard Fournette does concern me. And it's those games that he played, but he just you could tell he was hurt, but he's just going to try and keep playing through despite him becoming very inefficient when his legs are beat up.
Number 9.
All right, Kareem Hunt. He's our number 9 consensus running back in half-point per reception leagues. Mike, you've got him at 8. Jason, you have him at 10. Andy is me. That's me. Andy has him at 11. That's me. Look, last year, burst onto the scene 3 weeks into the season. If you drafted Kareem Hunt, which fortunately Mike especially told you to do last year as part of our, the Bold Prediction show, you were very vehement about drafting Kareem Hunt, and it paid off for fantasy owners last year. He was one of the most commonly owned players on finals teams, despite his funky middle of the season. RB1 or 2, 62% of the time. RB1, 43% of the time. He was the number 1 in the NFL in terms of broken tackles. We've talked a lot about Kareem Hunt in the offseason, but let's summarize some of the good and the bad about Kareem Hunt and what we expect from him last year, because nobody thought he would get the type of work that he got because Spencer Ware was there to start the offseason. Spencer Ware was then hurt. Kareem Hunt was thrust into a heavier role, and he excelled. 53 receptions, 272 carries, led the league in rushing.
So I will start with the good, and that is he led the league in rushing. Like you said, forced the most missed tackles at the running back position. He is one of 6 running backs that had over 300 touches. The good about Kareem Hunt is he is a fantastic running back, and if he gets the ball, he is fantastic for fantasy. The bad is Andy Reid just does these things where he forgets who the best players on his team are. I don't know how that possibly happens ever when you're feeding Kareem Hunt the ball, when you're dumping it off to him, good things are happening. So that's the only negative
do you think
I see
goes,
for Kareem Hunt.
Do you think Andy Reid goes like beautiful mind and just starts envisioning pass plays in his head during the game, and that's how he doesn't see Kareem Hunt anymore?
So he draws
so
him up.
Genius
He's
that
just
he's
looking
stupid,
around and
he's
he
a crazy person.
He just sees route trees popping into his head and how Patrick Mahomes can heave the ball downfield. Look, it's a historical guarantee.
Right.
You're going to have some games where Andy Reid loses Kareem Hunt. He can't find him.
Yes.
He looks everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah,
after the game. He acknowledges it to the media after the game.
Oh, I should have got Jamal Charles the ball more.
I really wish we can find a way.
Yeah, but here's what I think is the good about Kareem Hunt. Mike, you talked about how great he was on the field, on film. I mean, he's hard to take down. I have Kareem Hunt losing about 25 carries from last year. I think the backup situation will help. You know, they are much more well prepared, even if Spencer Ware is not fully ready, is not healthy, or has a setback. They have some other guys there that can take 25 carries over the course of the season away. I have him with about 150 fewer yards, 1 fewer touchdown, and he's still my running back 10. He's not going to just aside from an injury, some people are saying, oh, Spencer Ware's there, they're going to split the reps. That's not going to happen. He's the clear-cut talent where he's going to be the main guy. I see him taking a step back, but I would even still consider Kareem Hunt to be a stud that I would rather saddle him than grab a top wide receiver not named Antonio Brown.
I think a lot of Chiefs fans would, and I've seen it, they come out and they say, do you understand how good Spencer Ware was? That's not the concern. The concern is that Spencer Ware had a very serious injury, and going from, that he's still recovering from. It's not going to be, you don't instantly get back to Spencer Ware you had before the injury last offseason. It's been, just over a year? Not even a year since that serious injury. So,
and on top of how good Spencer Ware was 2 years ago, the Chiefs saw that, and then in the third round they traded up, and they traded a good bit to get Kareem Hunt to replace Spencer Ware eventually. I agree, Kareem Hunt is going to lose work. He's not going to get 90% of the running back touches for Kansas City like he did the past year. And like Alvin Kamara, he's the guy I think has more risk compared to these other running backs. But 53 receptions last year, it wouldn't surprise me if that number goes up, and we're talking about Kareem Hunt catching 70 passes. Maybe 70. Yeah, wow. I think Kareem Hunt, they've talked up his pass catching ability and talked up getting him more involved in that all off season. So maybe his carries come down to that 225, 230 range, but then he pads his stats with some more pass catching.
All right, let's hit the last running back on today's show.
Number 10.
I think I'm excited and scared for this guy, Dalvin Cook, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. We don't have a huge sample size, but what we saw on the field last year was dynamic. It was a player that was given more opportunity than we expected to start the year in light of the fact Latavius Murray had been signed. You still had Jerick McKinnon in Minnesota. But then the injury happens, right? And so right now, Dalvin Cook, Mike, you have him at 9, Jason at 11. I have him at 12. Jason, you're in the middle there. Give me the reason not to draft Dalvin Cook. Give me the reason you want to take him.
Yeah, I mean, the small sample size we had, he was unbelievably good. He was, a top 10 running back, locked and loaded. He was used in all facets, great at catching the ball. Jerick McKinnon is gone, so even though Latavius Murray is there, I'm not worried about his workload going away. And he was drafted to be that. He was drafted to be a star of the team. They've got
he was a second-round draft pick,
and he fell because of some character concerns going into that draft, he was supposed to be a first round, so they got a value on Dalvin Cook. You know, it was him. You know, he was at the top of some people's pre-draft board, so those are the reasons to take him. And the Minnesota offensive line improved last year. It's not great, but it was better than expected. The reasons not to are he could lose goal line work, which is obviously very valuable for fantasy, to Latavius Murray. He is coming off of an injury. And I will say this is a recent update to my rankings. I very slightly tweaked a lot of my Minnesota Vikings numbers. I looked at the team totals and kind of what happened last year. Kirk Cousins came down a spot or two. Kyle Rudolph came down a spot or two. Yeah, I know, right? Well, he came down a spot. I know that for sure. And Dalvin Cook did it as well. I think
everyone moved down. Weird. Rudolph moved up, though.
You know, I think last year was a really great, perfect year for the Minnesota Vikings in the regular season. And, you know, those things are hard to repeat. You've got a new offensive coordinator. You've got a new quarterback. Sure, maybe the quarterback's an upgrade. You can hope so, but maybe it's change is hard.
I think their OC.
Yeah, the range of outcomes for Cook is wider than the other names in this top 10, including Kareem Hunt, in my opinion. There's a lot of optimism. For those of you that have been following the injury that Cook sustained, he's already shed his knee brace. He's expecting to get preseason opportunity. He's a player I'll be watching. Does he have burst? You know, a lot of the times you see that in the preseason film.
Yes, you do.
Even in a few plays. We've seen that go different directions with weird players like Terrence West, where all of a sudden in the preseason a couple years ago, you go, oh, what happened? Why is he a little bit faster?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's for the casual fan to watch, especially at the running back position, because you're playing against a vanilla defense. They're not showing anything on the defensive side of the ball. What kind of burst does the running back have? Because you can go back to Doug Martin's second 1,400-yard season. When you were watching him play in the preseason, it was, wow. I don't remember Doug Martin looking like this the past couple years. And then he turned into an incredible value for those who were paying attention to him preseason. So that's a little tip for the casual fan to be watching for.
Okay. All right. We'll be getting into more running back names on our future episodes. I know we could shut the show down, but this is all about the Foot Clan. So I want to jump into the mailbag for at least a couple of questions here. So let's do it right now.
Mailbag.
It's just been too long. It's been too long. We had the divisional overviews. We didn't get in any mailbags, so I'm gonna bring forth a couple questions from the listeners.
Bring a forth.
Go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click the Submit a Question button if you want to send us your fantasy conundrum. You can dial our voicemail hotline, 302-464-TFFB. We can feature those on the show, on future shows. Let's start here. Ethan in Virginia. Do we still need to be worried about Big Ben's home-road splits? It seems that everyone is pretty high on Big Ben this year. I haven't heard a lot of talk about his road game issues of the past. Are there any concerns about him on the road this year, or are those woes a thing of the past?
No, there's still concern. He's I mean, the reality is if you look back over a career length of his home-road splits, it's significant. But if you take a look at their schedule to open the year, their road games are not hard matchups. They're matchups that you would still play them on the road. Their difficult games are the home games where, I think it'll even out a little bit. Because of his opening schedule, I'm not worried about that. And then by the time that, those difficult road games come, I think you're going to be able to stream another option. You're going to know great which defenses are great matchups to play against and find someone on the waiver wire.
It was not as bad this past year because in 2016, Big Ben, I'm looking at RotoViz here, was averaging 31 points at home, 16 on the road. But this past year, it improved 25 at home and 18 on the road. So they still – it still is a thing. Big Ben is
still a pretty –
and most quarterbacks are better at home, but Big Ben is just – he's a much better fantasy quarterback at home.
All right, we have a LaShawn McCoy question from Caleb in Kroll.
Kroll.
which sounds like possibly another planet. I'm
Wait,
not
Kroll?
certain.
Isn't that's a movie with Hercules? Who's the fella?
That sounds about right. In a movie.
Kevin Sorbo. Was he in Kroll?
A Kevin Sorbo reference.
Hold on.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'll ask the question
no.
while you research
No.
Kevin Sorbo.
No, I'm thinking of something else. But Kroll was a movie from 1983.
That's why I
Good
didn't
job.
get it.
Good
so
job.
I was very wrong.
Where would you guys be willing to draft LaShawn McCoy right now if you are drafting? So, like today, it's a simple question, or is it? More on, and we'll talk more about Shady tomorrow because he'll be on the second running back show. But
He's near the 3-4 turn to me. The back of the third is the highest that I would draft.
is the silence about the whole the legal issues, is that becoming more reassuring as the days go by?
I suppose it is, because when you asked that, I would take him at the back of the second or at the beginning of the third round. Also, Jason, Liam Neeson, star of Kroll.
Oh, it's got to be so good. Shout out to the Spitballers podcast.
All right, here's a little pop quiz. Liam Neeson's age. See if you can guess it.
65.
Mike?
Right around there, 64.
66.
Oh,
I win.
66. All right. David in Texas with our final question. How early would you draft a defense if top defenses score more than top wide receivers or running backs and nearly as much as a quarterback?
Maybe you've got a wacky league where there are huge bonuses and you want to take them a round or two early, but I still would not reach for a defense, because when you say a defense scores more than the running backs and wide receivers, maybe that's on year-end totals, but defenses are so dependent upon the matchup. I mean, it's very rare for a defense to go week in and week out against every opponent and be great. And then you've got teams where you can stream the Colts defense against the right matchup and outscore those running. I mean, if one outscores them, it's kind of like all the defenses in the league are going to do well if your scoring system is good for defense.
Yeah, I was going to say, if your scoring system emphasizes any position much more than another position, it doesn't change the value of that position very much, because the water level rises for all of those players inside of that position or all of the defenses. It's an important thing to remember, right? You could double all the scoring for quarterbacks. We're still going to tell you to draft one later.
I got to run something by the judge. I'm going to need a ruling over here.
All right. I hope he's standing by here.
So Judge Giamatti,
he's dusting off his gavel.
My Kevin Sorbo reference, he was in a movie called Cole the Conqueror. I thought it was Kroll. Am I forgiven, Judge?
You are forgiven.
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right.
I didn't see that one coming.
Out of curiosity, was that before or after 1983?
That was much after. It's Kevin Sorbo. That was 97. What?
Xena, Warrior Princess, or Kevin Sorbo? Who wins in a fight?
Oh, man.
Xena. She's a warrior princess.
I mean, Hercules he's a god, though. That's a tough.
That's a toughie.
Xena was way more BA than Hercules. I mean, get out of here.
That was some good TV.
It was
some
great TV.
People can weigh in on Twitter at the FF Ballers with your Xena takes.
Are we going to have a poll up?
We're going to have a
Hercules?
Xena Hercules take. All right. Hey, a final reminder as we close out today's show that FanDuel is ready after the long off season with more ways to play at FanDuel.com/footballers. Remember, contests for casual fans, new ones like Beat the Score, where everybody gets paid out if you beat a certain score. They have new options for playing with friends or enemies. And better yet, they've got preseason fantasy contests running up to week 1 of the NFL. So you can get started now. You can, if you're like us, you're crazy for football.
Yep.
You're happy the preseason's here. It's curing my fever.
I'll say this.
And it's preseason football.
If you're new to the daily fantasy, like using sites like FanDuel, the Fantasy Footballers DFS podcast will be back on the air soon. You should look for us in Apple Podcasts. Click that subscribe button. Be ready, because it's coming.
And now explain that slightly more. It's a once-a-week podcast that you do with
sure,
one of our experts.
Ben
Cummins.
Ben Cummins and Chris Meany and myself. We break down things for daily fantasy like FanDuel, and we make it accessible for everybody. We make it as easy as possible.
You know what else you break down? You break down a little draft, and you can play Draft Best Ball at draft.com/ballers as well. If you like best ball, Guys, enjoy the game tonight.
Call the Conqueror.
The games.
Rent it. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.